Pokemon almost always gain upgrades to their base stats when evolving. It's a payoff for progressing through the games and leveling up your team. But sometimes, when evolving your mons, they lose points in one or more stats. This could be due to their role changing, their design making their original stats make less sense, or just some random choice we will never get an answer on. Today we're looking at some of the more notable instances of Pokemon losing stat points when they evolve and how it affects them in competitive settings. So disclaimer, I won't be covering each Skwovet who loses 5 speed points when evolving, just the more notable ones. Our first mon to cover is going to be the Kingambit evolution from Bisharp. This one is interesting since they majorly improved this mon's bulk by giving it a massive HP boost and real solid defense boost while also making it even stronger as a physical attacker. But would you believe Kingambit only has a 60 point higher base stat total than Bisharp? What they did was take 20 points away from Kingambit's speed when evolving, bringing it from a very middling 70 base speed to a pretty slow 50 base speed. This speed loss doesn't really hurt Gambit though, as seen by its OU performance. The ways to take care of both of these mons are very similar. Bisharp doesn't see a niche over Gambit due to its speed advantage like some mons we will cover later, and instead acts more like a lower tier, weaker version. If anything, being able to min-max its base stats by lowering its speed just helps Kingambit while also making it stronger in Trick Room. With access to Sucker Punch, the speed issue doesn't hurt quite as much, especially when you send that boosted Gambit in late game to clean. Situations where the speed change does matter is when looking at a few of the many cross-generation evolutions we received in Generation 4. Most of these Pokemon were just fully improved, but some didn't really make the impact they were hoping for. A couple examples being Magmortar and Electivire, who gained small improvements to bulk and decent offensive buffs, but for some reason, to accomplish these minor gains, these mons had to sacrifice 10 points of their speed stat. While this isn't a huge deal in singles, since all these mons are pretty booty, it does affect them in doubles formats where Electabuzz and Magmar can actually be pretty decent. The 10 points of speed actually help a lot as you gain solid speed tiers to provide support. Your Eviolite bulk is much greater than your Evolution's bulk, as there isn't a huge difference to begin with, and even the offensive buffs don't do much since you are mainly running support, and in Electabuzz's case, you actually keep the same special attack stat that your Evolution has. This is a similar case with Magneton, who loses 10 points of speed when evolving, but it gains a lot more comparatively that it rarely makes sense to run Magneton over Magnezone. I do go over this in another video if you want a more in-depth look at these not fully evolved mons niches. There's times where Pokemon lose bulk when evolving too. A prime example being Porygon-2 when evolving into Porygon-Z, or as we call it in Canada, Porygon-Z. This is an evolution that often feels like a side grade. You essentially just change your role. Porygon-Z sports an only 20 point higher BST when evolving, going from 515 to 535. It gains 30 points in speed and special attack. To counteract this offensive buff, Porygon-Z loses 20 points in each of its defensive stats. This makes it more frail, even without considering Eviolite, which makes Porygon-2 pretty unique in that regard. This doesn't necessarily make one better than the other, but rather just gives you different options. If you want a wall breaker with decent speed and item flexibility, you would choose Porygon-Z. If you want a bulkier but slower mon who provides support and can still hit decently hard, stick with Porygon-2. We've seen examples of speed and bulk loss, but what about attack loss? This is seen when the fearsome Trapinch evolves into Vibrava. I was pretty surprised when comparing their base stats though, because I already knew Trapinch had a crazy 100 base attack for a first of 3 stage Pokemon, but when you examine the rest of their base stats, it doesn't really get much better. You only net 50 BST, and most of that goes into speed. You gain 5 base stat points in everything else, and then you lose 30 whole base stat points in your attack stat. It's no wonder this mon felt underwhelming in a playthrough. This means in game, when grinding up and reaching level 35, you become weaker right when most other mons are starting to become fully evolved. You have to grind 10 more levels after that to evolve into Flygon, just to gain that initial attack stat back. Of course, Flygon has way better stats across the board, but geez man, doesn't seem like as much of a payoff as you should get. An adamant Trapinch with no EVs is almost exactly as powerful as an adamant Vibrava with 252 EVs in attack. It might be one of the most bizarre, but admittedly one of the coolest evolution stat changes. It makes Trapinch pretty interesting, especially since it has access to Arena Trap and is the only one on its line to have it. I always find it interesting when a Pokemon changes its playstyle when it evolves. This is pretty rare since most evolutions usually build on their existing strengths stat-wise. But in the case of Larvesta and Volcarona, this isn't really how it works. We all know Volcarona as a terrifying Quiver Dance sweeper who has great special stats to abuse its move pool. A Quiver Dance will boost its three most prominent stats, and you would think that its base stat distribution of having low physical stats would carry over from its first stage in Larvesta. But this is actually the opposite, as Larvesta is a lot more physically inclined. It has a really solid 85 base attack stat for a first stage, and acts more as a physical wall-breaking pivot rather than a special setup sweeper. It prefers moves like U-turn and Flare Blitz, while Volk enjoys Bug Buzz and various special fire options. Volcarona overall will lose 25 points in its attack stat when evolving, meeting this fiery bug who's been using physical attacks, waiting to evolve until freaking level 59 will have to change up its entire attacking arsenal to be able to function. Going to hop back to a Gen 4 evolution real quick because I think it deserves its own little segment. This is Murkrow evolving into Honchkrow. It's a weird case as Honchkrow will gain massive power and bulk increases at the cost of 20 speed points. Not super weird itself, since we've seen a lot of cross-gen evolutions trade speed for bulk and power, but Murkrow outclassing Honchkrow, at least in doubles formats, has very little to do with its speed advantage. It gaining Prankster as an ability is a catalyst for outclassing its evolution. The speed does let it outspeed a few more Prankster mons, or Pokemon using +1 priority moves, but it doesn't do a whole lot more for this mon. You can get off some more attacks first, I guess, but you'll almost always be looking to provide team support, so the extra speed shouldn't come up super often. It is pretty notable though, and it reminded me of this comment left on one of my previous videos, noticing how often cross-generation Pokemon just randomly lose speed. I will also throw in a mention for Morgrim being slightly faster than Grimmsnarl as a Prankster user, but this really doesn't get anyone hot and bothered enough to use it over Mr. Snarl. There are cases where losing speed upon evolving is actually beneficial. This is showcased from the Hatterene evolution line. Hatena starts with a pretty low 39 base speed, which is understandable for a first stage mon. This slightly improves upon evolving, with Hatterene gaining 10 speed points and sitting at 49 base speed. Now here comes a final evolution in Hatterene, gaining a massive base stat jump, including 30 points in each defensive stat and 50 in each offensive stat. But then it goes and loses 20 base speed points, bringing it down to a base 29 speed, making it one of the slowest fully evolved Pokemon in the game. The Hat's even slower than Slowbro, that's saying something. But I did say this was beneficial. This is because Hatterene has the prime attributes for a Trick Room setter. Its snail-like speed makes it one of the fastest Pokemon in a Trick Room setting, giving it a huge advantage as it doesn't need to invest in speed and can focus more on bulk and power. There are rare cases that using a pre-evolution can have its merits in Trick Room because of their lower speed, but you would actually be fully worse off using Hatterene as your setter over Hatterene since it's a decent chunk faster. This is a similar story for goated Trick Room abuser Ursaluna. It's not much, but Ursaluna loses speed when evolving from Ursaring. Before getting an evolution, Ursaring pretty much only had a viable niche on Trick Room teams with its very threatening 130 base attack combined with guts and stab boosted facades. So when evolving into Ursaluna, going from 55 base speed down to 50 did nothing but help. There are actually a lot of Pokemon sitting at the 55 base speed benchmark you're now able to underspeed for sure. Plus you gain considerable power and bulk increases. I'll mention as well that Ursaluna loses 30 points of special attack, which just goes into min-maxing its other stats as neither of these Pokemon are touching their special move pool. I also didn't mention Blood Moon Ursaluna since it technically doesn't evolve from Ursaring. Now I'm going to switch it up a bit and visit a mon who became less viable when evolving. But if you're enjoying the video, why don't you take a quick second to subscribe to the channel. We just hit 15k and I really appreciate all of you who are here for this ride. I'd love to bring that number to 20k in the near future. Next we have the Gen 8 introduced Cursola. The lovable Cursola was murdered and actually became better as a result, gaining the great ghost typing. This really helped it defensively, but I don't think it really helped it offensively. This is one of a couple reasons I think Cursola flopped competitively. It losing 50 points in defense makes it really physically frail. And while it gains an incredible special attack stat and more special bulk, it retains its same awful speed stat. It won't survive more than one hit unless you're resisting it or if it's a weaker special attack. Its own attacks really lack the power to gain one-shots as well. Like a lot of special ghost types, its strongest move is a base 80 Shadow Ball. And it only has one stab, so the rest of the moves will have to try and hit super effectively to do much. It can run solid coverage moves like Ice Beam, Earth Power, and Power Gem, but these are still not overly powerful and they're non-stab attacks. Cursola is instead able to use its more defensively oriented stat distribution to its advantage. It having 100 base defense over 50 allows it to actually tank some physical hits, especially combined with an Eviolite. You only have to worry about 2 weaknesses while getting a couple of immunities and resists. You aren't even missing having that huge special attack stat because you have the reliable Nightshade to provide consistent damage while providing support by being able to run moves like Will-O-Wisp to cripple physical attackers, along with Broken Healing and Strength Sap. This is pretty different from the Porygon situation, as both of those mons are great in their own way, while Cursola sorta misses the mark due to not gaining the required speed or damage boosting ability to push it to the next level. I figured I would mention this next one because I know people will in the comments if I exclude it. This is the villain of VGC's pre-evolution. Torracat is the middle stage of the Incineroar Evo line and provides a couple different characteristics. The main one we'll be focusing on in this video is its much better speed stat. Torracat has a 30-point speed advantage over its evolution, which is pretty significant as 90 base speed can be considered relatively fast. It notably also keeps the same special attack stat, meaning it can hit just as hard on that front. But Incineroar does gain a large attack boost along with a pretty sizable bulk increase. This increase is actually large enough to make Incineroar bulkier than Eviolite Torracat. There are some advantages from the speed though. First, you would outspeed more opposing Fako users, gaining the jump on them, including an opposing Incineroar, huh? Not a bad start. You also would get off faster support options like Will-O-Wisp, Taunt, and pivoting moves like Parting Shot or U-Turn. Your Flare Blitz or Overheat would be faster than Daddy and Sins as well. You also obviously keep this strong Intimidate ability. So why don't we really ever see people trying Torracat? Well, I have seen some people try it out, and it definitely isn't a bad Pokemon overall, but it is more of a gimmick pick. The main issue here would be giving up your item slot. You need Eviolite to gain enough bulk to be able to take any hits, so you're missing out on running another useful item like Safety Goggles, Rocky Helmet, or Citrus Berry. You obviously are missing the Dark type and Stab Knockoff as well, which hits pretty hard from 115 base attack. The speed advantage is definitely cool though, and gives a reason to find a use for Torracat. Definitely the reason to try it out as a gimmick. Litten also has a 10-point speed advantage on Incineroar, which is mostly just something funny that I never noticed until making this video. So do what you will with that information. I wasn't sure if I should include the Cypher evolutions in this video. They all have the same BST, just shifted around. They are all physical attackers, with Cypher notably being faster than both of its evolutions, 20 points faster than Kleavor and 40 points higher than Scizor. It is currently in the lowest tier out of the 3 in singles play, with the others having characteristics that just push them above. The speed advantage is nice, it makes it a better hit and run mon with the fastest U-turn out of the 3, but the other 2 just hit so much harder and have better typings, which make them overall better competitively. I think some of you knew this next one was coming. It is time for the Nincada evolution line. You knew I couldn't resist this. Nincada, when evolving, actually loses 45 base stat points in its offense stat. This applies to both Ninjask and Shedinja. It seemingly just trades this with its attack stat, which increases to 90. Nincada also notably has a way better HP stat than Shedinja, who lands at 1 base HP and is hardlocked to having only 1 HP. So I'd say definitely take Nincada if you're looking for a mon who can take damage. Okay buds, I have one more to cover, and then I will be doing a speed round for some minor changes that aren't big enough for their own talking points, but cool enough to mention. The last one I have is Girafarig and its faded evolution to Farigiraf. One of my first videos on this channel was smack talking this mon, but I will admit I was not familiar with its game. This mon finally got the neck it deserved, giving it a massive HP boost and solid improvements all around, but it ended up losing a massive 25 points of speed. Farigiraf isn't really designed for the singles meta, sitting in the ZU tier in its debut generation, but it was given great tools to excel in doubles formats. Being able to block priority with Armor Tail and being a reliable Trick Room setter is where it finds its calling. Losing the 25 speed means that in its natural habitat of Trick Room, it will be much faster. This lets it get off strong spread attacks and be overall more threatening of a mon to face. Girafarig does get access to Eviolite now to make it a lot bulkier and can get off attacks faster than its evolution. It unfortunately didn't help it much in the grand scheme of things, besides being quickly banned from the Little Cup tier. That's about as close to a success this mon has ever had. Alright, speed round time. These honorable mentions don't necessarily have huge impacts that make the pre-evolution a better choice or improve the final evolution by giving them a niche. First, we have Onix, who loses 40 base speed when evolving into Steelix. It makes Onix a faster rocker choice, but that's about it. Wingull loses 20 speed points when evolving to Pelipper. Not notable at all, but could have been if Wingull gained access to Drizzle like its evolution. It would have been the fastest non-Uber Drizzle user. Basculin is another mon who loses 20 speed points when evolving. It makes it a faster pivot, but is still frail and destined for the lower tiers, while its evolutionary forms hit harder, have another stab to abuse adaptability with, and are able to actually take a hit. Shelgon, interestingly, has a 20 point higher defense stat than Salamence. It drops from 100 to 80 upon evolution, but the HP boost plus Intimidate more than make up for it bulk-wise, while every other stat is greatly increased. Poliwhirl has a 20 base speed advantage over its evolutions, who each lose 20 base speed when evolving. Outside of maybe Gen 1 NU, it doesn't really provide much to differentiate itself and give it a reason to be used. The first stage Poliwag also has the same speed as Poliwhirl, both rocking that 90 base speed. Galarian Mr. Mime gets a lot slower when evolving into Mr. Rhyme. You can see it in their dance steps, going from 100 base speed down to 70. This does give solid reason to use Mr. Mime as a faster rapid spinner who can be pretty bulky with Eviolite, but Mr. Rhyme gains reliable recovery and a lot more bulk, with the free item slot to run heavy duty boots, filling the role as a spinner a little bit better. Primeape is 5 points faster than its evolution Annihilape, but even though it still has access to Rage Fist, it doesn't give it any niche over its evolution. No stab on the powerful attack, less bulk and power, makes it marginally better than it was the previous generations. Annihilape also loses 10 points from its heavily used special attack, which just further goes into better rounding out its other stats. And finishing off this speed round is Stantler. It sees its 85 base speed dwindle to 65 when evolving into Weirdeer. Such a weird middling stat that doesn't make it great as a Trick Room setter. It would be better off having that 85 speed instead of making its offensive stats even. Not impressed with this mon at all. The implementation was totally fumbled in my opinion. I didn't cover every single mon who lost base stats when evolving, but are there any other ones that you think are worth a mention? Let me know. Also, which changes were you shocked to hear? Special shout out to my YouTube and Patreon members, including Goldbud Mr. Frank Beans. If you want to support the channel, check out my links in the description. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to check this one out next. Thanks for watching, buds, and I'll see you soon.